Hey everyone, this is Nick with Tenacity.ai and with my co-host Jason, and you're listening to the Cloud Cost Optimization Podcast. So today we're gonna dive into a topic that we hear recurring in conversations with you all, with our customers as well. It's the question of accountability inside of the organization, especially around things like tagging accountability, which seems to be and has been in our experience a real problem. How do you ensure that teams are tagging appropriately? How do you ensure that you're driving accountability inside of an organization? What are the sorts of what's the data or what's the sorts of tools that you can use to help you out? So, Jason, that's a really lightweight intro of the topic. Do you want to dive into specific maybe issues, use cases, or solutions?
Well, I think it plays along a theme in which we've that touch on a number of topics, but it's the concept of I go through this process to make sure my environment's optimized, it's clean, everything. I know why I have everything. I know what it's for. Has all that, and then these environments, they're living, breathing things, right? So they change. And if you're just doing projects on an interval to make sure that your environment is optimized, then you're going to run into the issue in which we've mentioned many times, is that 6 to 9 months down the road, your environment's going to look very similar to what it looked like before you went through that optimization effort. And so it's all about the processes that you have in place and the data or tools that you give your people to understand how the decisions they make on a day-to-day basis affect the environment, the usage, the spend, whatever is important to you, right? So, one of the common things we hear is that, okay, not everything in my environment's tagged. And there's lots of tools that show you that I don't have all my environment tagged, but, what helps me make sure that when somebody creates something that it's tagged appropriately, right? And how do I ensure that everything created is tagged appropriately from an environmental perspective? And then even further than that, once everything I know is tagged or organized in a way, how have I allocated my environment out so that I understand why I have all the dollars I have and what buckets do those dollars fit into, right?
I think, I think that's especially, important when we think about allocation across the organization. Breaking up the problem of accountability from sort of this. I'm losing the right word, ambiguous, or maybe it's just kind of a blob, right?
Because everybody wants people to be more accountable, right? It is a generic sort of term, right?
Right. It's a funny sort of juxtaposition. It's a funny sort of juxtaposition where everyone in an organization wants to, most people want to grow and move up the ladder and have more responsibility, but then when it actually comes to cloud accountability, nobody's holding the ball. And
it was probably the wrong term. You're right.
Yeah, so it's a little bit hard. It's very opaque is the problem, right? So cloud environments, especially even just at modest scale, but especially at scale, are it's sometimes hard to understand who's responsible for those environments, and you have a little bit of this transition going on, a little bit of confusion due to the transition that's going on, where IT is moving from kind of this cost center that controls all technology to now in the cloud world, it's really the business that's controlling the technology that they use and what they're going to deploy and how they're going to scale, and there's unit economics to that. And IT is more revenue aligned around ensuring that those environments are secure and being operated appropriately, but a lot of times it's the business driving those decisions. And so I think allocations is an especially important one. And it's the reason we want to go tag, right? So if we're going to drive accountability as an IT organization, we're the ones who want to enforce tagging strategy. I think that's where we have to start. And when we talk about allocation, cost allocation, you might not be doing chargeback, you might not even be doing showback, but it's still important. Even if you're not using a bill back mechanism, it's still important just to drive accountability and break down the environment. So if I have 3 lines of revenue, I would like to know what infrastructure or what utilization consumption in the cloud is aligned with each of those revenue drivers. So that's one.
And even more detail, the environments in that particular one, right? Like
Absolutely.
prod, dev, whatever, right?
Absolutely. So yeah, you can further slice that. So you can slice it all the way down to the individuals who've deployed it. Like that. We probably should dive deep on that at some point around a good tagging strategy. There's kind of middle ground. There's a way you can go really far and get a lot of detail, but there's kind of a basic high level way you want to do it as well. We could probably break that apart. But just in terms of thinking about allocation, having a tool or having a set of data that shows you where stuff is allocated as well as what's not allocated. That's really, really critical, is
right.
Understanding what infrastructure has yet to be assigned or aligned to the business. And if it's not aligned to the business, the heck is it? So you want to be able to go that deep. And I know there's a few people right now who just perked up and said, well, there's all sorts of stuff that's not aligned to the business. And I'm going to challenge you on that because it is aligned to the business, but it may be indirectly aligned. And you do need to figure that out. They might be shared services. You might need to divide them up that way. But they do, at the end of the day, align out to some sort of business need. So that's important.
Well, they better, right?
Right.
If not,
Right.
why do you have? Well, like that? Great, you have stuff out there that doesn't align to the business. Go delete it. Well, I can't do that because it'll break this thing. Well, then it aligns to the business in some way, shape. That's a real answer to that question. If it doesn't align to the business, go delete it right now. Get it out of here. We don't need it. And you know that's not a viable solution for half of that stuff.
No, absolutely. And so there's also now a subset of stuff that's subset of unallocated is also untagged. So there's stuff that is tagged, but it's not being allocated out to some revenue driver. It's not well understood how it should align with the business. But there's also stuff that's just untagged, and you need to know when that stuff crops up in your environment. So again, having tools and data that give you reporting around any asset that appears in your environment that is not tagged, you should be immediately, especially as an IT or a CloudOps group, if you're trying not to be a cost center, the very thing you want to do is assure accountability from the moment something is created. So that's
and it's like
so
most people will hold themselves accountable if they just know.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's like if I just have the data at my fingertips about the things that I've created that don't align with, say, my tagging policy or my allocation policy, then I'm more, if I have the data that shows me, it's like, hey, engineer 1, 2, 3, whatever, Jason or Nick, whoever it is, you're spending, the infrastructure you've deployed is costing us this much per month. This is the portion of that infrastructure that doesn't have an environment or a project or a cost center or blah, blah, blah tag on it. Here's the portion of the environment that's not allocated, that is not allocated to any particular thing. Then, wait a minute, I built all of these things for this particular project back here, right? And so that person is more likely to go to whoever they need to say, hey, everything you see here should be allocated to this project, right? You're just giving them data to help them hold themselves accountable to all these things, because most people don't want to make the wrong decision. They're doing the things they think they should do to produce the things that the business wants. And sometimes those two things aren't aligned or aren't communicated properly. And we can fix that.
I agree. Then it's really about operating. Jason, you touch on this a lot. The operate part of the FinOps framework is so important, and it's the part that I think is hardest. Even if you remove FinOps framework from it, but just operating environments to avoid technical debt, to continuously improve, is honestly one of the hardest parts of technology in general, because there are so many responsibilities on the technology staff, and they feel consistently understaffed. I've been there. I feel you. I understand it.
Underappreciated
Underappreciated as well. And so there's always more work than there's time to do the work. And part of the trick of being in technology is figuring out, well, what can I automate? What can I do differently? How can I change a process in order to get through this work? But there are no idle hands in technology. And so maintaining that operate piece is really important. A couple of shortcuts that you can use in this operate piece for driving accountability is, one, getting alerted to everything that's being created in your environment. And that can be a little overwhelming at times. What's that?
And who created it as well?
And who created it?
Yeah,
if you can pull that, who created it, right? That's really important. If you can get a report once a day that says, here's everything that was created, and that's your spot check, right? You can spend a minute on it, right? We've talked about execution rhythm or frameworks in the past for how to be successful. This is one of those components you can use operationally to just say, I'm going to have in my rhythm every morning, I'm going to check a report on everything that's been created in the last 24 hours.
Or weekly, if that's a better, pick the interval that makes sense for your business.
It makes sense for your environment.
That right. You should absolutely do. And then also, I would say one more thing with that, because we all get alerts on things, and sometimes you still have to maintain curiosity, right? If you're taking ownership of making sure that this is operating in an efficient manner, then when you see something you don't understand, the first word out of your mouth should be why.
Yeah.
Right. Just asking why, and not to say, just pick up the phone. Hey, why'd we create all this? Just wondering, what is this? What is this? Oh, it's all that. Make sure that it's tagged this way, that way. Boom, boom, boom. Get it handled right away. And then, but guess what? That person is going to do that next time. The thing that they may have not forgotten to do, they're going to do that next time if they know.
You hit on something really important, and we need to take apart this topic as well in a future episode, just because we've been doing this a long time. Alerting, 98% of the time, is just a noise problem, and people ignore alerts. But you should be curious about why it's a noise problem as much as you're curious about what's in an alert and what's in the data you're reviewing. Noise problems can be solved. But it's incumbent upon us, the technologists, to solve them. No one's going to solve them for us. So if you're getting a report where created infrastructure, I know some of you are immediately caught onto this problem. You have an ephemeral set of infrastructure, so you're seeing newly created infrastructure all the time. It's now noise. You can identify what of that is normal, and you can tag it as such so that you ignore it in your reporting.
So you filter it out. Exactly.
That's right.
If you don't want to see every single task that was created in ECS, filter it out. That might be noise. Absolutely. Or if you just want to pay attention to the services that drive, there are 5 services in a cloud environment that drive typically 90% of all of the costs. Just pay attention. And typically they aren't ECS, right? But, everybody has their, they have, everybody's environment can be different, right? So, I talked to a company the other day. The first time I talked to a company where it was like, man, it was something crazy. Like almost 50% of their usage was just S3. They had basically automated all the compute, most of the compute out of it, and they're just storing large amounts. It wasn't the first customer, but it is not common to see somebody in a cloud environment where object storage is their primary cost driver in the cloud. That's not a common thing. We've seen this a million times, right? So anyway, I got kind of sidetracked there. Sorry about that. But yeah, I think you're right. And alerting needs to be contextual, and it needs to be contextual to the person who's receiving it. And it's really difficult for another person to make it contextual for that person, right? I mean, it's just hard. We can give you the tools to make sure that you filter these things out. But you're absolutely right. Making sure that that's probably one of the first things that should be done on this particular topic, operate, right? Is that if part of the operation of my environment is I'm getting a bunch of noise from alerts that don't mean anything to me, then you're going to start to ignore all the things that do mean something to you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, be lost in the noise. And we didn't touch on anomaly detection. We've touched on anomaly detection in the past, but it is important to see through the noise and have a machine help you with where are there changes in your sort of expected outputs, right? Your expected costs. It's just an important piece in driving accountability, because when you see an anomaly that does become a permanent change, that does mean that someone has deliberately changed something, and you want to make sure that's right, because Jason and I both experienced this, and I'm sure many of you have as well. An unintended consequence sometimes of a change, especially as a dev, myself, making a change that might drive some component to be 10 times more costly. That wasn't my intent. I was trying to solve a different problem and ended up with an unintended consequence. So anomaly detection is another critical piece of that, sort of operate, continuously improve, and understand what's going on in the environment.
Absolutely. And anomaly detection, to tie back into, I think it was our last episode, anomaly detection can inform you of new normals, which need to go back into your budget, right? Not every anomaly is just something that somebody did wrong. Sometimes an anomaly is, I'm starting to do this a certain way now, and it's going to increase my costs, right? So, I think anomalies from an operate perspective. Listen, there's a number of different things. One, setting objectives, right? Understanding what your budget is, tracking towards your budget, making sure that you're tracking towards those metrics and KPIs is very important. Making sure that you can report on all of the criteria or data that goes into tracking your budget, forecast what's changing the spend, what are the biggest things affecting my environment, how are they going to change it, how are they going to impact my budget, all of the things that we need to do to operate a cloud environment so that it doesn't go from it's optimized today to 6 to 9 months later, it's back. When we hear people, it's back to the spend before optimization. When we hear that, we know that they've probably done a good job that one time with the optimized portion of the FinOps framework, but that operate portion, how are they maintaining the environment on an ongoing basis, day to day, making sure that it doesn't go back to where it was. And that is, we see that often. So it's really important to get that taken care of.
All right, I think that wraps our episode. We're at we're definitely over time limit. So head out to tenacity.ai, check out the demo. We're going to have the cloud cost optimization white paper up there very soon. Download that, give us some feedback. You're going to see version 1. It's a way we want to make sure that we're giving back to the community, and all the lessons we're learning as we work in the cloud. We want to share with you all as well. Tune in next time. Thank you.